Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out on this rainy day. It's been a very, very bad rainy day. But yeah, I'm glad to see so many faces here, and I'm actually kind of glad being here on a stage after almost 4 or 5 months now. I enjoy doing this, but AI season isn't really my thing. My thing is Android. So when Google I/O comes around, that's when my season kicks in and goes on all the way till November. So I'm glad to be here, and today I'm going to be talking about Android at Google I/O. So show of hands, how many of you have seen the keynotes and any other follow-up um, developer videos? How many of you have seen it for Android? Okay, not a lot, which is great. So this makes things easier because I'm going to be sharing things that were not really announced during the keynotes, things that might not have been announced during the live presentations as well, which were recorded and uploaded later, sure. But a lot of this information actually goes in documentation and blog posts. So I read them all, I try to understand them, and then I'm here to present them all. It's not going to be a very, very long presentation. I'm just going to touch the surface. I'm not going to even dive into the code. But I'm just going to talk about what is available, what's coming up, and what you should be excited about if you're an Android developer. I'm Kartik. I'm an Android engineer at Bilue, and I'm also a GDE in Android. As it's been 1 year exactly. Wow. So yeah, became a GDE last year, and it's been 1 year. All right. This thing is not working. Oh, thank you. The search is still there. I don't want to search. Amazing. All right. So what I've done is I've identified three core themes of things that have been announced for Android developers at Google I/O and things around Google I/O. Still not working. Oh, it's on off. Great. It works now. Right. So first one has been building adaptive apps. We'll talk in detail what adaptive apps are, but the idea is that your app should shine across all the platforms and form factors that Android is expanding into, embracing massive changes that are coming with Android 16, and then just making sure that you do not have to build 5 apps for 5 different screen sizes. One app should do it. Second is supercharging development with AI. Now, I'm not an AI developer. I don't understand AI and the math and everything behind it, but I use AI as a tool. So we'll be seeing how AI, Gemini specifically, because Google is integrating with Android tools and the Android system as well. And then just in general, enhancing the productivity and performance of your apps and yourself as well as Android developers. We'll be looking at a high level overview of what's coming up in Jetpack Compose, app qualities, and just future proofing your apps if you build for Android 16, and how do you scale from there on for future Android versions. All right, let's begin with building adaptive apps. What is what do you mean by adaptive Android app development? Well, Google states it as a strategy to build an app that considers the expanding Android ecosystem. Like I said earlier, you will want to build the app once, and the app scales to different form factors, different orientations, and things like that automatically. Like we used to building one app for a mobile phone and possibly a different app for tablets with some added functionality or reduced functionality because maybe some feature is not available on that tablet. So why bother having that in the build itself and things like that. But the future for Android looks like you build it once and we distribute it in a way that it adapts to what is available on the device itself. So we'll talk more about it. But the idea is to go beyond the smartphones. Sure, smartphones are there, tablets are there. We're not ignoring them, but to the mix, we've added extended reality, so headsets and eyewear and things like that. You might have seen a nice demo of that in the keynote as well, in the developer keynote as well. We've got foldables now. We've had foldables as first-party support for almost 3 years now, if I'm not mistaken. And Google is doubling down on Android within cars as well. So we'll talk about it more in the next few slides. But with all of this, the reach has expanded to almost 500 million devices, where one app, if built properly with the adaptive strategy in mind, it can scale to 500 different devices in one go. So that's like a lot of devices and a lot of potential users as well. So when it comes to adaptive design, there are several key form factors that Google has identified and empowered you to develop for. First one is phones, tablets, and foldables. They're central, they're not going anywhere. Android is one of the largest ecosystems powering such devices, so this cannot be ignored, right? And as you can see in this nice little video over here, is that the same app is performing differently in a continuous way um, while the device changes its orientation and form factor and whatnot. So this is possible with adaptive features that are coming in Android. Next up is Chromebooks. Chromebooks now support full screen Android apps as if it was a free-form desktop environment. So they should just feel like any other desktop app. Android 16 has made a lot of improvements in supporting desktop mode. So if you plug in the USB cable of your device into the HDMI port, USB-C to HDMI or something like that, you get a full desktop feature on the monitor or the screen where you're connecting to. This has been developed in collaboration with Samsung. Samsung has done a good job of making sure DeX works fine. So it builds on top of DeX, but this is now coming to mainline Android. So your apps should be able to adapt and scale to that freeform window experience as well. With that, apps within permitted categories can and will adapt to the screen space available in within your car. It can be Android Auto, it can be Android Automotive. If you don't know the difference between these two, we can chat later. But yeah, the idea is that your app should adapt to that. Maybe sometimes it's circular display, sometimes it's a long display, sometimes a landscape display, which is quite narrow in height. So it should just adapt to it and work fine. And then finally, extended reality. Now, Katie has done a few talks about extended reality and her experiments with the emulator, but this is becoming a bigger reality than just an emulator now. Hopefully, by the end of this year and early next year, we'll have devices to purchase, which means we don't have a lot of time to actually get our apps ready. But yeah, once this is available as a proper form factor, your existing APK, without you having to make any changes, will be able to run on an extended reality device. Sure, it won't be like a full screen experience or whatever. It might be a windowed experience, but it will run. That's what Google is trying to promise. Minus some features which you might need at a hardware level. That's a separate concern. But yeah, this is another reason why adaptive development is important, because now Windows can scale in a potentially infinite screen, right? And to make all of this happen, there are key tools and libraries that Google has identified and shared. So Jetpack Compose Adaptive Library is one of those. It's actually disguised Material 3 Adaptive Library with the Jetpack branding on it. What it does is it out of the box comes with a lot of building block and composables, which you can just throw in your app, and they have the smartness to be adaptive. So, for example, bottom navigation and a navigation rail, both of these have been combined into this navigation rail scaffold or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. But what it does is, if you're on a small width device, it becomes a bottom navigation. But if you're on a large width, large height device like a tablet, it automatically becomes a navigation rail without you having to put in that extra effort. It plugs in with Navigation 2 and Navigation 3 libraries, which again I'll talk about in a minute. And it just works out of the box. So your work as developer is to actually use those and support those, rather than rebuild everything from scratch. That being said, Jetpack Navigation 3 is out in alpha. What it does is it gives developers the power to control your navigation stack now. There has been a lot of feedback that Google has received over these years with the different Jetpack navigation libraries is that what's going on within the navigation library has largely been is a black box. So they've, they've from the ground up they've redone the library and they said, okay, you build the stack, we'll control the navigation. That's all. So you can define how you want the screens to be presented. You can define if two screens or two panes need to go side by side, if you have enough space and things like that. Navigation 3 will basically handle any animations that you specify, any screen transitions, and making sure that the screen, the composable screen, gets instantiated in the memory and gets displayed, and all those things. Um, so that's navigation 3. And window size classes. This is something that I've been working on lately on my work project as well. So far, we've had 3 window size classes: compact, medium, and expanded. Um, with the newest library, I think in Alpha 1.5 it is. I'm not sure exactly. They're adding 2 more, which are large and extra large. So now you've got 5 opinionated breakpoints, very similar to the resource buckets that we had earlier. We still have them. It's very similar to that. However, now you can query the device in real time about how much space you have. You don't have to worry about screen widths anymore. You're worrying about the space that is available to draw on and adapt your UI accordingly. With Android 16, you won't be getting information about screen orientation and things like that. Your apps will be forced to be in full screen. So this becomes really important to understand what your current state of screen is, or what your current drawable area is, and adapt accordingly. Again, it's an opinionated one, so Google has in the documentation specified exactly what breakpoints would fit what kind of devices. It's a great documentation if you want to just understand what kind of width and height class combinations do certain devices fall under. And they sort of guarantee that 99% of phones fall in this category, tablets fall in this category, and in most cases it just works out. And with the adaptiveness, this also works out for foldables and XR as well, because in XR, as you expand and shrink your app screen, your window size class will change, so your app will automatically adapt to it. All right, moving on to AI. This is going to be relatively small because it's a tool and we're not really building apps using AI. We're using it to build our apps in a faster way, in a more productive way. The idea is to get Gemini as a driving factor to improve you as a developer. Doing mundane tasks like generating fake data for a mock server and things like that, offload it to Gemini. Why do you want to sit down and write that long list of data classes and whatnot? So Gemini in Android Studio now has access to Gemini 2.5 Pro, which was the latest model available as of Google I/O this year. Some of the core features because of 2.5 Pro are, first of all, journeys for Android Studio. What this does is it's in XML format, but you can define user journeys and then run these journeys as your UI tests or automated tests, end-to-end tests or whatever, and get a nice report about what's going on. We've done some espresso testing and wrote clicks and stuff like that, but with journeys, you can just define them in XML, and then there's another new API called UI Automator API, which empowers you to handle UI automation for tests using Compose. So all of that is available in alpha, and then the journeys thing is capable of hooking up with automated test device farms like Firebase app distribution. So it is able to command those physical devices in a test farm to perform things for you, and all you have to do is define a user journey. App Quality Insights panel is something that is coming up. I think as of yesterday, the latest Android Studio stable build. It's called Narwhal, if I'm not mistaken. What it does is it automatically analyzes your crash logs and suggests potential fix in a diff format. Sorry for the small screenshots. I haven't tried these out myself, but this is what's there in the documentation, and I just pasted them here. They were really small resolution images, but yeah, that's like a diff suggesting what you could do and why this probably has happened, etc., etc. Um, so you don't have to sit down and do all the debugging and backtracking and tracing and etc. etc. Gemini will do it for you. In a lot of cases, it will be able to solve. Obviously, in some complex cases, in some complex business logic, it'll. I hope it will fail so that I have my job. Next up is some UI development and code assistance through Gemini. Gemini will now be able to generate compose previews for your composable. It's getting that expanded functionality, and then it gets presented as a diff so that you can choose which parts to merge, which parts to drop for the query, like as if it's an agent for you to do things. Um, then transform UI with Gemini. This is similar to what Photoshop and Illustrator have gotten. Just transform this image or this section using AI. Right click on the preview and in natural language define what you want things to be changed. For example, there are three buttons: align them vertically, or align them at the start, or whatever. And Gemini will do a best effort to do that for you. Some advanced features that are in alpha in Android Studio right now, but they will become stable going forward. One of them is version upgrade assistant. So this particular agent, it's an agent really. It reads your toml file where you've defined all your dependencies and suggests what can be upgraded, what cannot be upgraded. I'm not sure how configurable it is, but whether you can define it to ignore any non-stable versions, release candidates, things like that. I'm sure that would be configurable because I know there are tools out there which hook into the Gradle systems and you can configure them. So if they leave that thing out, I don't know why people would be really using it over other tools. Um, and Play policy insight. So Google Play has been adding new and new confusing and complex policies for the past 2 or 3 years now. Um, so with this particular agent, what it does is it goes through your app and shows you the play policies that might be necessary for you, but presents them as if it's a lint warning. You use Most Android developers know what lint warnings and lint errors are, so they know how to deal with them, how to work around them, how to fix things. They took that as a nice presentation, and they will be suggesting things that you should do within the app so that you do not fail this policy when you upload the app later. And finally, the agent mode for Gemini is coming to Android Studio. It's not there yet. Right now, you can just have a conversational reply in that window. But with the agent mode, you'll have access to your files properly. You can give more context using more annotated tags and whatnot in the chat window. Um, yeah, it's not out yet, even in alpha. So I don't know how well it works, but it's coming. Right, Gemini beyond Android Studio. So Gemini Live is now live in most Android devices in the world. Um, you can share your screen or camera feed and have a conversation with Gemini while you're pointing at things. And the fun thing is, it actually waits for you to complete. And if you interrupt it, it just politely sits back and listens to you. Like, yep, sure, you're the master. Um, Gemini is also expanding to Wear OS, cars, TV, and Android XR. But the current availability of Gemini Live is in Android phones. If you've got the if you've got the Gemini app, you can sort of click that button which has three dashes and the Gemini logo, and that starts your Gemini Live experience. And later this year, Gemini is set to take over the Google Home APIs, so your Google Assistant will go away, and Gemini will take over everything. Google Assistant would technically still be there because it handles all the automations. Gemini will use Google Assistant as a tool to control your home devices and things like that. But Gemini will be at the front asking other things to do things for you. And finally, enhancing productivity and performance. Now, obviously, with all these changes and all these new things coming to Android, new adaptive stuff, you would want to maintain your app quality and not get bogged down with, oh my God, these are so many changes, it'll take me forever to do it. So you want to maintain your developer velocity as well. So to boost productivity, Jetpack Compose is getting some new functionalities and improvements. including a lot of these libraries in Jetpack Compose getting Kotlin multi-platform support. I think the latest one to get was Room as a database interface. Um, but yeah, the basic ones that stood out for me was autofill support. Um, it's sort of hard to have autofill support in Jetpack Compose text fields. I'm not sure exactly why, but Google has listened to the feedback and they're now adding this new modifier called content type. It is already available in your Jetpack Compose alpha builds, and it just makes it easier to have your autofill apps fill up your text fields and things like that. There's a new auto size parameter coming to your display text kind of composables. It is configurable for font sizes and min max fonts, and will give you granular control about how you want to display the fonts and font sizes. And some visibility tracking APIs. So there's a new low-level API called on layout rect change, which will help you track your composables position, XY position, rectangle sizes, and things like that. And then on a higher level side, you will have a new API called on visibility change that will help you identify. For example, in a carousel, you want to see when did this composable come into view and when did it exit. And then on first visible is another one that is being added, which is super useful if you want to just uh, put in analytics just one hit, even if the user is scrolling on it multiple times. There's no point sending three hits of that in a second. On first visible, will give you the result for that session. Some Google internal benchmarks on performance and stabilities. Oh, sorry, performance and stability things on Jetpack Compose. Over 2 years, they have reduced the jank rates. I don't know if you've noticed, but Jetpack Compose, when it as a UI tool, when it came out, was quite janky. It's much better now. It's a lot more stable. So according to Google's internal benchmarks, it was dropping only 0.1% of the frames. As of 2023, it was dropping 2% of the frames. So that does seem like a significant improvement. Some optimization. So there's a new thing called possible composition that's coming in Jetpack Compose. Basically, it splits the recomposition of of over multiple frames. I'm not sure exactly how it does it, but it helps the main thread, the UI thread, to offload some of the work over time. So instead of doing heaps of work in that small time frame, if possible, it will do the recomposition over several time periods over multiple frames, text measurements, and things like that. And another feature that is coming is your lazy list items can be prefetched, so that that does not become a blocker for your UI thread, because lazy list needs a number of items that you already know, and then it starts its computation and whatnot. So you can prefetch all of that and let your lazy list know about it, and then decide to draw it. And again, according to Google, enhanced stability, they have reduced the number of experimental APIs. So a lot more existing APIs which were marked as experimental are now stable. Um, Apparently, it was 32% up until Google I/O, which were marked as stable. Now it's up to 66%, which are marked as stable. So overall, Jetpack Compose UI is more stable. And finally, optimizing app performance. So to optimize app performance, they've given you a few tools. R8, as you might have known, is a code shrinking tool, but it's capable. It is becoming more and more capable. They're adding in Android Gradle plugin 9 something called Gradual R8, which will also be able to shrink your library files based on certain rules, etc., that you write, without touching everything else. In fact, you can, this is according to the developer tools team, you can actually select which all files of that library you want to shrink and then leave the rest as it is. Totally up to you. So that'll be an interesting thing when it comes out. Should help us reduce the app sizes by a lot. And then UI Automator, like I said, is there to help you create reproducible and automated UI journeys. It plugs in with the journey thing that I talked about earlier. so you can automate your UI tests. Media performance. So if you're working with media, especially media which is fast consuming media like Instagram Reels or TikTok and this and that, they are introducing something called Media 3 Preload Manager. So if you know the user is going to scroll, or the user feed needs to have 50 media items ready to display very quickly, you can preload them in memory using the Preload Manager API, so that you are not wasting time loading them in memory as the view comes into that window. So faster app startups, you can preload them, smoother experience because less jank for or the less waiting time for UI thread and things like that. So that's something that's coming up soon. And Android 16 will now it's now out, so it supports 16 KB page sizes in your memory, which requires, if your app is using native code, it requires a recompilation. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of issue if you are really dependent on that. So Android Studio is proactive about it, gives you warnings, and it's relatively easy to compile it if you own that library or that piece of native code. But if you don't, good luck. Um, Whoever has built that library,
it is possible.
I'm still struggling with it. I've got bad vendors who don't respond. But yeah, if you own that piece of native code, recompile it, and you'll be fine. If you don't, please ask your library producers to please recompile it and just send it without any code changes. Android Studio has all the tools to do all of that. And okay, final thing I think is streamlined workflows. Yeah, I should have changed the title here, but anyway, UI development and testing. So Compose Preview is getting some improvements where you can now jump to different definition. You can toggle between different hover states of different components. You can use your keyboard to actually go through different items in the navigation in the preview. You're getting resizable previews. There's a drag handle which you can just move around and it changes size, which in turn lets you quickly preview how it will react to different window classes. And then Android XR has an embedded emulator available now within Android SDK. So you can just spin up your app on an Android XR emulator and see how it's going to perform. Code compliance and updates. I already talked about the play policy insights. Comes in as link checks, so helps you build apps which will have a higher chance of getting approved. And then ADB Wi-Fi improvements. They have completely reworked how ADB Wi-Fi connection takes place between Android Studio and your physical device. It's faster and it's more proactive in the sense that if you go to your devices list and your phone is right next to you, as long as wireless debugging is enabled on your phone, it'll just show up there. You don't have to manually start the pairing process. You still have to pair, but it will show up that this device is capable of pairing and running ADB Wi-Fi. So maybe one step less of jumping through all the hoops within the phone to start the pairing process. And yeah, Android Studio Novel feature drop that came out yesterday is now based on IntelliJ 25.1 platform. It supports Kotlin K2 mode out of the box now. It has improved dependency resolution within your Kotlin build scripts. It will now automatically download library sources, which is a great win for me because I have to depend on a lot of them. And then a few other improvements here and there. And it also brings backup and sync of your settings with your JetBrains account or your Google account, which was missing for the longest time just on Android Studio. It was there everywhere else. I still haven't found the button for it, but I'm sure it's there. And that's it. That was the brief overview I want to talk about, and thank you. And if you want to view any of this information, I should have put links in. Okay, I'll put the slides up on my website, and then you can click on these links, and you'll be able to see the sources. Anyway, back to this. Thank you, and I'm open for questions if any.
Android type of devices. So would you recommend, like, if I was to build an application, would you recommend something like Flutter for more like a universal design, or would you go for just Android Studio with the Kotlin code?
Thanks for that question. So, yeah, like I'm a core native Android developer. I'm not a big fan of cross-platform unless it is Kotlin multi-platform because that's a different beast. So I would say I go Android native because anything that new comes in Android, it will be first supported in Android Studio, in Kotlin, and in Android SDK before it makes its way to Flutter. Sure, Flutter keeps getting updates very quickly, but it could stop getting updates because that is not Android. That is a tool to build Android and iOS apps on websites. So my opinion is always going to go native for Android, go native for iOS. Anything else? Yep.
Obviously, a big push towards adaptive sizing. Have you seen anything good or useful to push, especially high fidelity designers?
Mm-hmm.
Because I find they design for typically iPhones, but they design for a phone and
Yeah.
then go, oh yeah, there's other devices, cool. And
It's a great question. Thanks for asking. So the designer I'm working on in my project right now has amazing knowledge about both Android material guidelines and HIG for Apple. He's one of the few designers who doesn't do Apple first or Android first. He does them both together, making sure there's feature parity and it's native as much as possible. Um, he keeps complaining about the fact that I'm limited by the design system within the organization, but that's not his fault. He just has to deal with it. Uh, but yeah, so I would say it depends on the designer. Like you said, sometimes they just design for a screen or a phone and be like, figure it out. But this particular designer has actually in Figma given me what it should look like on compact, on landscape, if you can figure that out, medium, expanded, foldables, all of that. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll build it.
Is that Figma giving him those tools, or is he doing lots and lots?
No, he's doing a lot of it. He's done a lot of user research and everything to understand what's going on and how can I optimize the real estate there.
I mean, I've worked, the best designer I've worked with, he actually built, like, he was pretty good at building apps himself, and he would like build the previews and show them expand and show you how he thinks. He wouldn't say that's the final one, but he
Yeah.
used the tools, and it ends up with a similar sort of result where, you know, when it's compact, it's 5 things in a row. When it's expanded, it's
Yeah.
scaled vertically. But it sounds like there's at least 2 designers out there, but
Yeah, I'm sure.
it's the rest of them that I want to get.
Yeah, a lot of this depends on. Sorry, a lot of this depends on the designer. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also leading to the data as well.
Hmm.
We've been doing some analysis on the app that I'm working on to see what types of devices it's being used on and the screen sizes. And it's a surprising thing to a lot of the product managers saying like, you know, oh, well, you know, you're actually using this device on this many tablets or this many foldable devices. They're like, oh, well, we should be supporting it on those devices, especially as the people that have those sorts of devices tend to be the ones with more money who are buying more expensive things, who might be using your company's products more. You know, if they're going to spend $2,000 on a phone that folds, they're probably got a lot of money to spend on nice luxury items.
Yeah.
So
They can afford to complain about it too.
yeah,
They might know the CEO as well.
That's possible.
so it can be really helpful to gather the data on what screen sizes people are using, what devices people are using, to look into Firebase, make sure you're capturing that information early, so you can go to your designers and your product owners, because ultimately the designers will do what the product owners say, and say, like, we have this many percentage of people using this type of device, and as we get these XR devices and other fun things, you know, if you can say, you know, we've got actually hundreds of people or thousands of people using our app on an XR device when we get those devices. Let's actually put some money behind it and show them that. Another thing is that Google promote apps that support different device form factors. So if your app supports tablets, it actually has a differentiated experience for tablets, and it will be the same with XR. They'll actually go and promote that in the Play Store more. So if you're looking for more Play downloads, that's a good way of doing it as well. I know that my app that supports Watch does a lot better than my one that doesn't. Yeah. And I think that one of the reasons is because it gets high rating in the store.
Thanks for that.
To help designers from the code side as well with compose previews. You can mock up a bunch of stuff together, give it like different screen sizes, give it dark mode and light mode, and say, hey, this thing is broken. Have you thought about it? Did you actually think about it and just input it in the design and like give them a bunch of stuff really quickly rather than the designer having to do everything up front? You can just show them the broken bits and then they can fix those with it.
And you can do that automatically with screenshot testing and
Yeah.
multi-previews.
And if your designer doesn't do it, just use Stitch.
Right. Any other questions? Yep.
The uplift required for an existing app to go to the new adaptive layout, what would you say is involved there?
Again, brilliant question. It's not like you have to recreate the app from the ground up. It's an incremental change. So if you are upgrading to the latest Jetpack Compose libraries, material libraries, you're getting a lot of benefits out of the box. But in a lot of cases, especially when you're putting different layouts and things, you have to put in some effort to ask the device what screen size, what window size class is available right now. You can't depend on orientation changes and triggers for that anymore. Those are just getting ignored completely. So yeah, remove your screen orientation requests and plug in your combinations of height and width window size classes, and then put your layout in depending on what combination you are. That kind of effort is required.
And it's worth noting that's coming in next year. It's a mandatory thing. It's not a if I really like it thing.
It's mandatory already because
Well,
with Android 16. But yeah, by next year.
existing apps. Yeah.
All right. That'll be all for me today. I'll hand it over back to Kaz. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have a 5-minute break, so